Hi, Dan here with SkyPilot FaithQuest podcasts and videos. Be sure to check the subscribe button below. It doesn't obligate you to anything. It just says that you're interested in knowing about new videos whenever you open up YouTube. Also, welcome to the sixth in this year's new Lenten video series. And each of these videos is based on the readings, stories, or traditions associated with a particular day in Lent. And this one is based on what happened on the day we call Palm Sunday, the day of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And this year, 2021, it happens on March 28th.
Welcome to the Sky Pilot podcast that explores questions of faith, spirituality, and religion. I'm Dan Matthews, and I don't have all the answers, but I do enjoy the questions. Welcome to the podcast where every question is an invitation into a spiritual quest, and you're invited along for the journey.
Well, this is a strange time to describe. Welcome to the era of disappointment, when hopes are high and yet disappointment, loneliness, and isolation are the prevailing stories. And even when there is hope for the future, there's a dark pall that hangs over everything. And no, I'm not talking about the time in which we are living through COVID. I'm talking about Jesus' story as he progresses through Holy Week. And perhaps nowhere is it any stranger and more incongruous than right here on the day we're talking about, Palm Sunday. Everyone is so happy. There's a parade. People are shouting cheers and celebrating, and everyone seems to be convinced that a new day is dawning. And yet, the man about whom everyone is talking in this parade, the man everyone's excited about, well, that guy, he knows for sure that there's going to be some really good news for everyone at the end of this story, but he also knows for sure that he will have to pay a price for that good news, a horrible price. When I attended college at Sewanee, it was required that all students complete a 300-level course in a foreign language. And all 300 and 400 level foreign language courses at Sewanee were literature courses. So I had the opportunity, because I was taking German, to read a number of German short stories, novels, and plays on my way to fulfilling my language requirement. Much of the German literature we read was written just after World War II ended and was very odd and occasionally eerie. I remember one story that we read was entitled The Visit of the Old Woman and was written by a guy named Friedrich Dürrenmatt. Although I've never seen the movie, it was also later made into a film starring Ingrid Bergman and Anthony Quinn, although they changed the ending of the play to make it a little more palatable. It is the story of a small town girl who had gone into the world and become very famous and very wealthy, and I mean very wealthy. She had not been home since her childhood, but now she was returning. This was the big homecoming. The city had planned a celebration. They'd put up banners to celebrate her arrival. The important people of the city were there to greet her. They were delighted that one of their own had made good and was returning. But truthfully, in this story, it was much more than that. The village from which she'd come, it was in bad shape and getting worse. The city was in deep decline, and they hoped this small, economically depressed town, well, they hoped that they could get some financial help from this multi-billionaire. When she arrived, they had arranged for her to be greeted by her ex-sweetheart. What better way to reignite old feelings than to have the guy she used to date be part of the process? And the ex-sweetheart, Alfred was his name, was standing on the stage with a place of honor. But internally, if truth be told, he was anything but certain as to how this would turn out. He stood there quietly wondering what this reunion was going to be like. Had the leaders of this town forgotten that many years ago, when he was much younger, he'd sent this girlfriend away? Well, more like he'd run her out of town. She'd become pregnant, and he didn't want to deal with that, so he discarded her. And then he lied He denied that he was responsible, and he paid two of his friends to lie on his behalf, and in essence, left her to leave town to hide her shame. So he stood there anxious. Would she even speak to him? Would she be angry? Life had clearly gone well for her. She had become successful. Perhaps she was even coming home because she no longer held the grudge of the past. Perhaps she no longer held any anger for him whatsoever. Maybe, although he turned his back on her so long ago, she no longer held a grudge for that. When she finally stepped off the train, he saw a confident and powerful woman. She stepped forward and greeted each of the people in front of her. There were cheers and excitement. She even gave the old boyfriend a warm greeting, and his anxieties about the moment began to melt away. After she was welcomed by the dignitaries of the town, she was given an opportunity to speak, and she stood up at the podium and thanked the people of her hometown for their warm welcome and greeting. She spoke pleasantries, and then she told them why she'd come. She came to give something back to her home community. She came to offer each of them an enormous amount of money. She was going to give $1 billion to this small hamlet. Half of it would go to the city, and half of it would be divided amongst its inhabitants. And every single person in the town would be offered this gift. But she just expected one small thing in return. She wanted Alfred, her old boyfriend, to be killed. Her boyfriend stood in shock, or ex-boyfriend. Everyone was shocked. The mayor just flat turned her down. And for the next day or so, Alfred, who was married by then and had children of his own, walked through the community numb. Everything was fine. Everything seemed fine. Nobody treated him differently, but he still couldn't believe what had just happened. His family dismissed it as being some sort of sick joke, and they went about their lives as if nothing had happened. He really didn't get nervous until he realized that members of the community were beginning to make some new purchases, big purchases. There were new cars being driven through town by people who did not have the resources to buy a new car. He began to get nervous for his safety, all the while having his fears dismissed by his friends and his family. Finally, one day, he decided to make a run for it. He gets in his car and drives out of town, but suddenly he finds his car blocked by some members of the community. They're not going to allow him to leave. His potential death is too valuable. The entire story is the story of a town that continues to live with lightness, as if nothing's wrong. They live as if everything has never been better, and yet the imminent approach of death and its dark shadow are constantly there as a part of this story, but they won't acknowledge it. It's a very strange story because it is the picture of a normal community, even a joyous community, with the secret of a dark act that lurks just around the corner. This is the very nature of Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is, I would guess, unquestionably the most exciting day of the disciples' lives. Jesus is finally welcomed into Jerusalem the way they had expected him to be welcomed for so long. The crowds are cheering. The people are smiling. They're waving palm branches. Cloaks are being placed on the ground in front of Jesus to pave his path on his way into Jerusalem. The King has arrived. The people have acknowledged his power and his presence. And probably as far as the disciples are concerned, everything is right. Everything is on track. Matter of fact, to them, it has never been better than this. And yet Jesus knows, as he rides into Jerusalem, that these people are celebrating as he rides towards his death. They cheer, they shout, they weep, they reach out. And they will be nowhere to be found when the authorities come for him. No, it's worse than that. They show support and adoration in this moment on Palm Sunday. But these are the same people who will actively participate in making sure he is executed in just a couple of days. In this moment of great joy, there is darkness, death, and the specter of those who will betray him and deny him and kill him. All that hangs over the story. Each and every biblical story is not just a story of historical and religious figures. These stories are our stories. You and I participate, and no other day in the entire church year are we, at least in the Episcopal Church, so conscientious about making sure that we are aware of this. We read the gospel story as a play, and we, the congregation, well, we take all the parts. We were there. We were there when Jesus rode into Jerusalem. You and I participated in the parade. You and I cheered him on. You and I turned our heads when he was arrested. You and I watched quietly from behind the corner as they took him to be crucified. You and I stood at a distance and watched him die. There's a tendency to want to focus on the parade of Palm Sunday. We want to be part of the pageantry and music and celebration of Palm Sunday. In many churches, before this service, we stand outside the church and have a blessing of the palms before we enter the church building. Then we enter the church in a grand parade, waving our palms. We love the procession in. Well, most of us do, except for those of us who are terrified that we might have to sit someplace different than our regular pew and that this is scrambling up our traditional seating. And if truth be told, most of us would like to jump straight from the parade of Palm Sunday to the celebration of Easter. But it's vital that you and I look at the events of Holy Week square in the face. It's vital that you and I acknowledge our part in Holy Week, our part in the passion story of our Lord. Today, Palm Sunday symbolizes, in some sense, our lives. Many of us act as if nothing's wrong. We act as if our lives are fine without any help from anyone. We act as if we have it all together and we're in control. But we aren't. We don't have it all together. We aren't fine. We are sinful and we are broken if left on our own. But one of the great ironies of life is that if we believe ourselves to be powerful, we are powerless. But if we will acknowledge our sinfulness, if we will acknowledge our brokenness, if we will admit the darkness that is often within us, then we open ourselves to the real power, the salvation of Jesus Christ. As followers of Jesus Christ, hopefully we can't help but look at the celebration of Palm Sunday and think of the darkness to follow. We see the parade, but the shouts are shallow and the praise is fleeting. We know of the betrayal. We know of the abandonment. We know of the denial. We know of the death to come. And yet we also know the whole story. We also know that in our sinfulness, Christ can give us redemption. Because even through the darkest hours in our human history, God brought us to the light, love, and redemption that is revealed at the end of this very difficult story. Amen. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, I invite you to check out my podcast. You can find them wherever you listen. Just look for Sky Pilot Faith Quest. And if you're looking to add to your Holy Week something new, I have a podcast for Palm Sunday, one for episode for Monday, Thursday. I have an episode for Good Friday. And just a reminder, be sure to click that subscribe button at the bottom of this video so you don't miss out on future videos. And also, if you enjoyed today's offering or found it meaningful or helpful, please click the like button below. And if you really enjoyed it, think about sharing it on social media so other people can discover this channel. And on your spiritual journey, may you ask questions, seek answers, and boldly go wherever the quest takes you.